Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. So this is going to be a ramble video. Not real, yeah, just a ramble. There won't be any rant. And what I want to talk about was actually a subject that came up on the forums recently that I thought was interesting enough to approach from a video standpoint. So what I want to cover in this video is whether or not buying on the secondary market affects the maker or the company. Does it have a direct effect upon them, financially and otherwise? So the short answer is yes. The long answer is why and how, and that's what I'm going to try to delve into. Now, honestly, trying to explain the market is kind of a complicated subject, and I'm going to try not to get off on too many tangents here as we go through, but some will inevitably slip in. Now, my understanding and my experience of how the market functions is based on a number of things. I've been into knives for 6-7 years now as my primary hobby, but more importantly, I've had conversations with custom makers, both new and established, regarding the market, marketing, sales, how to do their books, social media, web and web design, and pretty much every other topic under the sun. I do have people approach me quite often. Also, I've had similar conversations with knife companies, both new and established, and I've also had similar conversations with dealers, both new and established. So I've had this conversation many times with many people who it directly affects. So that's what we're going to get into today, is some of that experience and my understanding, and hopefully answering the question why without too many tangents. So a little bit of eye candy in front of you. We do have a couple production and a couple custom knives, so let's just go through those real quick. This is the Custom Knife Factory Ratata M390. Very cool knife. Did a video on this one. Kaiser Megatherium. I've done a video on this one. Very interesting knife from a production company. Nicely executed. Now the customs. This is the Clyde Challenor Talon. This one is done in Dragon Scale Damascus. Hopefully I can do it a little bit of justice here under the lighting. Have not done a video on this particular knife. I picked it up from Blade Show, but I have done a video on my other Talon with Damasteel and Damascus, and then we do have a custom slip joint from Johan Ellis or JD Ellis of South Africa. Carbon fiber, this is the Meganique, and this one does have a Damasteel blade. So again, the conversation isn't going to be about these pieces in particular or these companies, just kind of eye candy and a reference point as a whole. So as this conversation, let's start off with custom knives, because I think it's a little bit easier to understand from a custom knife standpoint. So we're going to talk about whether your purchase on the secondary market directly affects the maker. So let's talk about the food chain real quick. So with custom knives, obviously you have the custom maker, they make the knife, and hopefully the way it functions is they sell it to an individual. That individual keeps it, enjoys it for a certain amount of time before they decide to move it along and try something else out. Now again, we are not going to go into the people who buy specifically to flip, because that's a whole different conversation, and no one's fond of those people, to be honest. And then there's also dealers who come in, buy directly from makers, and then they turn around, and essentially it's the same as the people who flip. In fact, the people who flip often do it to the dealers, and the dealers turn around and sell it to someone else at a significant markup. Anyways, we're not going into that. So we're going to talk about it from a custom knife maker to the initial customer to the next customer in the list, as we look at whether or not your purchase on the secondary, which is obviously the second purchaser, directly affects the maker and financially or otherwise. So let's pretend that this slip joint here is $1,000 knife, just for ease of math, and they sell it at a show, or they build it specifically for an individual, ship it out to them. It was $1,000. Now, because we can't keep everything forever, because everyone has finite finances, at some point they're going to look to move it along and try something else out. Might be a couple weeks, might be a couple days if they don't like it, might be a couple weeks, might be a couple months, might be a couple years. But if they spend $1,000 on this piece and they can turn around and sell it for $1,000 to the next person, they have a net loss of zero, right? So we will use the dollar value as their approximation of risk. So there was no risk essentially in buying this piece from the maker because they sold it for exactly what they paid for it. And they sold it to that other individual on the secondary market. Now you as the buyer on the secondary market had to agree to pay the same price that they paid. And so essentially you are keeping that knife maker's market stable, right? Because there's no risk for the initial buyer with this piece. And if this piece sold for $1,200 instead of $1,000 on the secondary market, you as the purchaser has said that the value of the item has appreciated in order for you to acquire it. So you pay extra. Ergo, there's no loss to the individual buyer. There's a slight amount of appreciation. And again, there's no risk. There's even some upside. And when that happens, people are going to continue to go to that maker to try out his knives, to try out his designs, to try out his work, because there's no risk associated with the purchase. Where the problems come into play is when this was a $1,000 knife from the maker and it's now selling for $800 on the secondary market. Either because there are questions as far as fit and finish issues, the supply outweighs the demand, it's an old design, there's just not demand there. Could be for any number of reasons. But because that initial buyer just took a loss on this piece, any subsequent buyers that are on this maker's book are going to have to decide, okay, what is my risk? How much money am I going to lose to try out their work? If it's, $100, maybe I'm okay with that. Maybe that doesn't bother me. I'll refer to it as my rental fee. Maybe $100 is too much, so I'm going to pass. I'll let someone else take that spot. And essentially the problem comes in is when this drops down to a certain price threshold, we'll say for ease of math $500 on the secondary market. Now anyone who's going directly to that maker is going to say, ooh, yeah, I'm not going to take a 50% loss on this just to try it out. I will go to the secondary market, I will pay someone $500 and I will try it out that way and then take a significantly smaller loss to move it along as I get tired or want to try something else out. And it's not a question of do they look at it as an investment. And this is what I think that most of the knife community is. We want the experience. We want to try things. We want to, what's the cutting geometry? How are the ergonomics? How's the flipping action? Is the fit and finish good? Do they do a good job with the etch? It's really about the experience, right? It's not that most people look at these as investments, but in order to have that experience, what is it going to cost me? And if the answer is nothing, then I'm definitely going to try the experience. I'm going to take that leap. I'm going to try it out. If the answer is it might be $200, $300, $400, $500 that I will lose, ergo that's what the experience cost, and it's not worth it to me. So when buyers on the secondary market essentially dictate the price they're willing to pay, that dictates if people are going to go back to the maker and spend more money with them. So the amount that you pay or buying a knife on the secondary market absolutely affects that maker. The higher the demand on the secondary market, the more demand there is with the maker initially, the easier it is for them to sell their products, to do auctions, to do lotteries, to support themselves financially. The less demand there is with the maker, the harder it is for them to support themselves financially, and that's all dictated by the secondary market. So those custom makers who understand the market, who plan to do this long term, they constantly look at the secondary market and they make changes to the way they do things. Perhaps they only do certain models in limited quantities. Perhaps models, let's say with Damasteel, are only reserved for the auctions because that keeps interest high, it keeps supply low, and it keeps demand high. And some of you guys might look at that and say, well, that's just kind of sneaky and they're playing a game. And yeah, that game is keeping food on the table long term. That's what they have to do. It's not black and white, it's not simple, it's very complex. And they have to keep all that in mind while they deal with customers and while they actually build the knives themselves. So it's a very complicated system, it's a very complicated process. Some people do it well, some people do it terribly, some people are already gone because they couldn't manage to do all of those things all at once. I would never want to be a knife maker. So that's with custom knives. So hopefully I've presented that in a clear and mildly concise manner as far as how you buying on the secondary market affects the individual maker. And granted, you are just one piece of the puzzle, but depending on how many knives that maker has made, 5 sales could significantly impact their ability to sell knives to initial buyers or to lotto pieces. So again, maybe special pieces are reserved for auctions. Maybe they'll only do a certain model for a limited number of pieces before moving to a new model. You know, I mean, there's any number of things that they can do to try to affect that. So anyways, that's custom knives. Let's go to production knives. So essentially it's the same type of equation. What we have here, so we've got, again, 2 production knives, we'll call it that. So the difference in the equation is you have the company sells to dealers, dealers sell to individuals, individuals sell to other individuals. And again, it really comes down to what's the price for me to experience this knife and decide if it's for me. And you know, granted, you might watch my videos, you might have a pretty good idea, but until you actually have the knife in hand, you can't be certain that it's for you. And you know, that's really why I make videos, is to help you guys have a little bit more information or a little bit better look before you put your money down on something. I don't try to tell you guys you should buy this or you shouldn't buy this. I never have in a video, and I never will, because I think you guys are educated enough or smart enough to make your own calls when presented with additional information, because that's what I want to see from my videos. But again, that's a different tangent. So anyways, we've talked company, dealer, initial buyer, secondary buyer. Now it's the same equation. What is the risk, or what is it going to cost me to experience this knife? If this was a, if this was a $400 knife and everyone bought them and no one liked them and they're all for sale for $200 on the secondary market, then people are going to be less willing to buy from this company in the future, right? So the reason that happens is if you go on the forum, you're looking for this knife and there are 6 people selling it, you know, what you're going to do is you're going to start reaching out to each one of them, figuring out who has the best price, and then you're going to buy from them. It's just common sense. So those guys will basically start to, you know, speed to the bottom essentially for the best price so they can move that piece before they lose even more money. And again, it's not a question of investment. It's, I bought this knife for $400. I want to sell it and try something different. I really want to lose as little money as possible in the process, that rental fee. Smaller rental fee, the better. So that's the way that it affects secondary market. So if a bunch of people are flipping them for lower the price, or buyers on the secondary market are saying, hey, it's not worth it to me, I'm only going to pay you $150 for this, you know, $400 knife, then again, people are going to be less willing to buy the next model from this company or any company. Again, these are just a representation. So the price that you pay, how healthy the secondary market is, or how willing people are to buy them, dictates the price. And Chris Reeve, crazy as it is a perfect example of this situation. Chris Reeve knives, Sebenzas on the secondary market retain an incredible value. And people always say, hey, I'm thinking of trying this Chris Reeve, should I do it? Everyone always says yes. If you don't like it, you can sell it exactly what you paid it for. And that is the perfect description of what it means on the secondary market, right? And so because of that, because there's no risk, you can try it out without any fear. You're always willing to go buy a new one from Chris Reeve because you know you're not going to take a massive hit on secondary. And so, you know, that's what happens on the secondary market with even production knives. What people are willing to pay, how often they're willing to, you know, pay close to retail, how easily they are to move, how quickly they're bought and sold. All of these things affect the primary market. If all of a sudden people stopped paying good prices for Chris Reeve knives on secondary and they dropped to $200 for a $400 knife, you'd say, you know what, I'm not paying $400 brand new, I'm going to secondary, I'm paying $200, and then that money is not going to the initial buyer. So when I was at Blade Show, so one of these interesting things, so I was having a conversation at the ZT booth, and I said, hey, I honestly think that you guys do Hinderers better than Hinderer does. Is that affecting his sales negatively? Because I would rather buy something from you than from Hinderer. And much to my surprise, they said, no, actually, he's doing better than he's ever done before. His sales are picking up. And, you know, the fact that they produce Hinderer designs as well has not affected him. which is, kind of blew my mind. I assumed it would be the opposite, but even with that increased, supply, the demand is still high, or people are trying out the ZT and then they're switching over to try out the Hinderer. So again, it's not a perfect answer, and sometimes situations go different than you think that they would, like with that Hinderer example. But by and large, that is how your purchases on the secondary market affect both custom makers and production companies. And again, I'm not going to get into any names here because I don't need the drama and I really don't care enough to do it. But one of the things that can happen is if there's a maker that comes out, let's say a custom maker, and their stuff is just the hottest thing and everyone's clamoring to buy it, and pretty soon it went from $1,000 to $4,000. Let's say there are fit and finish issues. The person who paid $4,000 to pick it up is not going to talk about those fit and finish issues. They're going to try to get rid of the knife as quickly as possible, taking the least amount of loss, because they probably shouldn't have paid $4,000 for it in the first place. And so sometimes that's one of those dirty little secrets that can happen, is no one's talking about the issues, but everyone is flipping the knives as quickly as they can. And so, I mean, if you are going to be playing in that couple grand range, you need to be very mindful of how quickly these things are moving and what people are or are not saying. So, that's just one of those things, those dirty little secrets. So again, I'm not getting into any names of any custom makers. The same thing can happen with production knives, though. If a knife comes out, everyone's expecting it to be great, and it's crap, everyone's going to try to get rid of it as soon as possible, and you're going to see just a rush to the bottom. So, what may have been a $400 knife, it won't sell for more than $200 on the secondary market, and then dealers are forced to drop their price from $400 to $200 on a knife, because people realize, hey, there are issues, this isn't really a good knife, and that dealer needs to move that inventory. So they're forced to come down to the secondary market, which means that they are not going to buy more from that production company, or they're going to buy much smaller quantities in the future. So again, these are all the things that can happen, but yeah, in summation, the prices, the quantity, the speed of resale in the secondary market absolutely affects the custom maker or the production company. To think otherwise is honestly naive. So anyways, that's my thoughts, that's my ramble on this particular subject. And again, that insight, that experience has been gleaned with talking to custom, production, new, old, dealers, established, I mean, everyone. So a lot of insight, a lot of experience there that is not my own, but borrowed from other people. So if you like this ramble, be sure to give me a thumbs up, and then tell me what other things or other topics you might want me to address in the future. If you disagree with me and I've hurt your feelings and pissed you off, feel free to give me a thumbs down and let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all of your ad revenue regardless. So anyways, that's just kidding, but kind of funny, kind of true. Yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.